became known as Paddy the Millionaire, and he got the title when he was quite a young man, after he had got a letter from America telling him that he was the sole beneficiary in the will of a distant relative in America, who of course Paddy had never seen. And first there was hundreds talked about, and then it grew to be thousands, and finally the neighbours were saying, "Oh, he'll be a millionaire." Not knowing, of course, had an idea what £1 million could be. So the name stuck with him for the rest of his life. He became known as Paddy the Millionaire. Now, in his earlier life, Paddy used to travel over a lot to Scotland to what was known as the tatty hooking, digging the potatoes and doing other harvesting work, of course, and then back home for the winter. And it was when he'd arrive home for the winter in the Cayley houses, he would regale the neighbours, telling them some of his exploits in Scotland. And some of them were really good, you know, and probably there was a lot of truth in the stories, but I'm sure Paddy was fit to add a little bit to them. And this particular one, it was on another occasion. Paddy was on his way home from his labours. The weather was fine, and he was on the second day of his trek to the boat. He started out early, as was his custom. In the late afternoon he was approaching a spot where another road from the right joined up with the main road on which he was travelling. He spied a black man on the side road, heading towards the main road. Paddy had never seen a black man in his life, and surely had never conversed with him. He was reluctant to meet up with him, but the coloured man had different ideas. He was determined to meet up with Paddy and of course have a little bit of company. So it was that the two men met up at the crossing. Now, Paddy found out after he greeted him that, apart from having trouble understanding his accent, that he was quite an affable fella, and he was glad of the company. And soon Paddy inquired of him, was he heading for the boat also? And the black man said, "No, I'm going to Carlisle." As they journeyed along, they passed through small towns and villages. On a few occasions the coloured man lifted articles that were on display outside shops. Paddy was strictly honest and insisted he leave them back. They continued their journey until late in the evening, when the darky took a trumpet from under his coat. "Look what I've got, Paddy," he said. "Where did you get that?" Paddy asked. "Ah, it was just hanging outside a shop in the last town we passed through," was the reply. As it was a few miles back, Paddy said, "Well, you may keep it now, but don't take anything more, or you'll get both of us into trouble." They continued on until darkness fell, when they were looking for a comfortable place to rest for the night. They spotted a barn a short way in from the road, and noticed that it was well lit up. As there was no one in sight, they decided to investigate. They approached cautiously and shoved the door open. To their surprise, it was laid out with tables and chairs. A large table just inside the door against the wall was covered with a white tablecloth which hung down to the floor. There was a great array of food, sandwiches and cakes, along with plates, cups and saucers on the table. Both men were hungry. The black man was about to tuck in. Paddy forbade him, saying, "It's not ours to take." Just then they heard voices coming, and they had no time to get out, so they delved in under the table. Here they would have to stay until the harvest Thanksgiving was over, for that was what was about to take place. Everyone in the barn, eventually the barn filled up with people, and the prayers and Thanksgiving commenced. Now and again the black man would whisper to Paddy, "Will a sound trumpet, Paddy?" Paddy would whisper back, "Keep quiet, or we'll be heard." When the main speaker was called upon, he referred to the great season they had. He thanked God for the good summer which enabled the crops to grow. Now that the harvest was saved and the cockle burned, it reminds us of the great harvest to come, at the time of judgment, when the angel Gabriel will step forth and sound the trumpet. On the fourth trumpet the coloured man gave a long blow on the trumpet. Everyone in the barn jumped up petrified, and rushed out through the door and down the lane to the road. The two men crawled out from under the table. Them ones won't be coming back tonight, laughed Paddy, looking at the food. I suppose we might as well help ourselves. They ate their fill and put something in their pockets for the morrow. They sought shelter elsewhere for the night. Next day they parted company. Paddy headed for the boat and the black man for Carlisle. But Paddy always emphasised in later life that he met a number of coloured men after, but that they weren't all like the man of his first acquaintance. They were mostly strictly honest people. So, well, when Paddy's £1,000,000 arrived, it was far from being $1 million. He was just fit to pay for a few articles of clothing that he had got for his family on tick, and that was the amount of his £1,000,000. But he was known as the millionaire until this day. People still refer to him.